There's something for every imagination at your local comic shop. Visit ComicShopLocator.com to find a store near you.
And head over to Comic Shop Locator, guys. Check out the site, put in your information, tell them where you're at, and they will help you to find a local comic shop near you. If you are not actually near a local comic shop, stick here, obviously, but feel free to reach out to us, and we can put you in contact with great stores, as always. I'm going to bring in two people now. One is appearing in his very first convention as a creator, and the other has a long history of amazing work. I'm going to bring in the one that's a real creator first, which is Rob Humphrey. And then I'm going to bring in Pat, who's a baby creator.
It's how you made up for giving Pat top billing, right?
Yeah. I've been preparing for this panel for days.
Obviously, since you have graphics and everything.
No, so I'm going to start off by saying you guys are two of my best friends in the industry, and it's great to have you here. Thank you for coming on this crazy thing that I'm doing.
Dude, we are so excited for this. Thank you for, I won't speak for Pat because, Pat could speak for himself. But well, we try not to let him speak for himself. But thank you so much for having us. And, man, congratulations. This whole experience is a game changer. This is an absolute game changer for the industry. Kudos to you, Jen, Jesse, everybody involved. It's fantastic.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Kyle.
Well, I just want to say and thank you, Rob.
I just kind of wanted to echo what Rob was saying. I've been checking this out a lot this weekend and seeing some of these, guys like Howard Chaykin and John Romita Jr. Seeing these like just very, very just personal and familiar conversations with these guys. It's just amazing to see this and just have that kind of close access to that level of creator and the wide breadth of talent that's been on this weekend from true indie people all the way up to legends of the industry is pretty incredible that you guys put this together. So congratulations.
There's a huge kudos there. I do not fanboy often. I have been doing comics and have done enough cons and have been around enough. Like, I have a short list of fanboy creators for myself, and Romita Jr. is right up there. So watching yesterday, I was like a 9-year-old kid again, just so excited.
The whole time, I don't know if you could see it, Rob, and you'll appreciate that. You could see I was grabbing my chair and grabbing my arms because it was all I could do to keep from doing this. Like, Rob, you're a Spider-Man nut, like just like me, and getting to talk to John and Scott Hanna about their run on Spider-Man, but getting to talk to John Romita Jr. was like one of those, is like pinching myself, like, is this my real life?
Right.
Pulling my arm hair to see if I'm awake, that kind of stuff. Just, it's been a wild weekend, but let's talk about you. And by you, I mean Rob. So we'll start with Rob. Rob, how did you come to be a comic book creator?
Man, it's a long journey. So I have been involved with comics in some way, shape, or form as a fan, as a retailer, I've worn just about every hat, I think, at this point. But I started in as a fan is like a little kid, like back when Kenner Superpowers released, how the toys would come with comic books, like the mini comics in them. It's like, that was my first exposure to the medium. But then as around 9-10 years old, I think I had mentioned yesterday during the segment with John that, that's that point where like you start getting birthday money and you start spending it on stuff. And like my first comics that I bought were Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Amazing Spider-Man books off the spinner racks, right? And finding Amazing Spider-Man at that age set me up for a love of the medium. And then toward my late teens, I started dabbling around with comics retail. I would do like mall shows, reselling, at the kind of the boon of internet shopping. I started my own online shop for a short period, was part of my local LCS, helping run that for a while. And then I've always had a writing background, right? Like I've always enjoyed it, and I actually was on a path into journalism at one point in my distant past, being a high school graduate, going into college, and sometime around, I don't know, maybe 8 or 9 years removed from college, I kind of went, you love to write and you love comics. Why aren't you writing comics? And I'm like, I wonder how you go about doing that. And just one day it kind of all came together. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to do it. And I just started writing for myself. And then opportunities began to open up in terms of being able to do web comics and self-publish. And it really just started as me being a fan as a kid and being an avid writer. And then it just spiraled into this.
And we're going to talk about, I think I'm going to talk about Punching the Clock probably the most because, well, one, I like the name, and two, it's totally relatable. I think everybody who's ever had a job can relate to Punching the Clock. So you drew on your own life for your comics in a lot of way. And how does that work? Telling a semi-autobiographical or almost completely autobiographical story.
So it's interesting. I tried not to place the focus on me. And really, the entirety of Punching the Clock is a love letter to my best friend. The main character in the book, Jeff, who resembles me in appearance, is actually him personality-wise. Some of the stuff that character gets away with is the type of stuff that Jeff would pull all the time in real life as we were working. I mean, there's nothing better. You can have the worst job in the world, but if you're working with your best friend, it's bearable, right? And we've all had crummy service jobs, and everybody deals with the public at some point in their life, and it's, to your point, it's relatable. So, I had spent 6 years working for coming out of high school, going into college. I spent 6 years working at a particular retailer that I won't name, but I'll just identify by a bullseye. And when I left that place, I was told by a number of people that I should, write a book, because I had all these wild stories about just stupid stuff that happened, whether it be dealing with the general public or like the idiocy that goes on behind the scenes, dealing with management or your coworkers when they, when you're doing something to pass the time and entertain yourself while you're on the grind, So just started there, and then I had post that moved into another retailer, and I mean it after a while it just became catharsis. When I decided I was going to write comics, I decided to go down that rabbit hole because I was still working a retail job, and it was therapy. It was how I was surviving, mentally. It was having an outlet for it.
So I'm gonna let him talk now. Guys, just so you know, if you're watching this, you're like, why is he being so mean? Just remember that I love these people. They're some of my best friends in the world. And if I'm not trolling Pat, I'm probably not breathing. So
true story.
It's like a second language.
It is. And it's a shorthand that all of our con friends have, all of our con family have. Making fun of Pat, asking where he is when he's supposed to be there and he's not.
The bad part is that started without me actually having ever supposed to have been somewhere.
Right. I know. But these stories, us making fun of Pat, we're going to talk about this in a little bit. But we're gonna first give you a chance to tell people how you came to be in comics, and why you chose comics, and then if for no other reason than you'll appreciate this, I need to do a technical thing real quick. So tell us about Get in the Game.
Okay, so I started out. I didn't take really the traditional comics path. I always knew comics and I loved comics, and I'd grab them here or there, but I wasn't the fervent collector that so many were, that are in our industry. Obviously, I was super familiar with Spider-Man and Superman and Batman and what we might call the big three. But I wasn't in the I wasn't collecting tons when I was a kid, and I think a lot of that had to do with I didn't really grow up around an LCS. We didn't really have an LCS in my neighborhood. Even growing up in the Detroit area, we didn't really have anything. The suburb I was in didn't, and the grocery stores had like a spinner rack, and I didn't go grocery shopping with my parents, so it's like I wasn't in there, and it was a lot of that. So I had that cursory knowledge, and I knew about it, and and obviously I still loved Star Wars, and I knew all these things, but it's very different for me. I kind of jumped back in, and I jumped kind of in with both feet around the New 52 time, because I was their target audience. I was like, hey, we're rebooting. We're going to major reboot, and everything's coming back to number ones, and this is the perfect time to jump on. So I literally was exactly what they were hoping for from that. So, and from there, getting involved in comic convention and promoting for that, it really brought that kind of love and desire, and seeing all these great people that are creating this stuff. And I never really had the confidence in my writing ability, and definitely didn't have the confidence in my art abilities. So kind of started out with a podcast, like, so many others do. And went that route, and it just kind of had been bugging me in the back of my head of like, you need to do something, you need to publish something, you need to publish something. So at the beginning of 2019, I decided that I was insane, and decided to do an anthology book with 10 different creative teams as my first project. Wrote one of the stories in there, and kind of shepherded the other 9 to fruition on that, and kickstarted it and got it together, and that's Getting the Game was born. So it's a 10-page. It is a collection of 8-page comics by 10 different creative teams based around one simple prompt: video games. That's it. That was the only prompt that people were given. There were no rules. There were no, it must be this type, it must be that type. And what came back was pretty incredible, because you don't think about what can be a video game inspired until you see these stories. Yeah. Yes, Derek. Yeah. That's my collecting time. I have cursory knowledge, but
Pat went from like having his toes in the water to like jumping into the deep end.
Right. Pretty much.
Well, one of the things I wanted to ask about Getting the Game is you had people contributing to that book that also weren't comic book creators before they got on that book. A prime example is our friend Dave, who was a print journalist. He was a newsman. He's the guy running around in the funny hat with the piece of paper coming out of it that says news. And
that's what's beautiful about it, because we have first timers, people who have never made a comic before, like Dave, myself, Michelle Gallagher. She had never done anything. Sam Chestnut from the Get Good story, he'd never done anything. Up to people like Rob, who are kind of getting more and more stuff out there. He's continuing to create a body of work. Up to people like Seth the Moose and Caitlin Smith, who are established and giants of the indie comic industry. So it was a huge, like, very wide breadth of talent that went into this, and I was super blessed to have all these people want to be a part of this, and who knows what the future holds, because I know there's some people who are mad at me that they didn't get to be in the book. So
Well, there's some people who are mad at you for existing. So, guys, after 3 days of this, I need a panel where I can just have some fun with you. And so we're going to do that. But so you kickstarted the book and crowdfunded, and then it got noticed by SourcePoint, and I know they helped you put it together and are involved a little bit in some regards. How does that? I don't really care to dig into all of that, but the question I have is, how does it feel that on your first time out, you've got, a publisher that's having a ton of success right now, interested in, at the very least, coming along and being like, hey, try this, do this thing, it'll help.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. I mean, I am absolutely floored that in what is it, a week from tomorrow? Is this the second to last Wednesday? Yeah. So, excuse me, a week from Wednesday, the new previews is going to hit the comic book shops, and the game's going to be in there for April release into comic book shops through Diamond. It's pretty incredible to sit there and think about that. Of like, hey, they believed in this enough to put their name on it. And SourcePoint Press is putting out incredible product right now. I mean, you've got Franklin and Ghost. You've got Dead End Kids, Broken Gargoyles. I can't believe I'm going to give him credit. Claim. If there's anybody that gets more grief than me, it's Greg Wright.
That's a true story.
It's to be in that level, to be in that group of creators, to be a part of that is pretty special. For something like this to have been believed in to that level that they want to put their name on it, and help that distribution and get that through there. And we had a wonderfully successful Kickstarter. I was super happy that we raised the goal. I was shocked, honestly. I kind of put it, I put it out there in a way that I'm like, this should cover. If we do this, it's gonna be good, and we'll be okay. And fully expecting that, man, I don't know. But yeah, I was all the support we got. It was just absolutely incredible to see, and seeing names pop in there. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm going to see a bunch of people I know, because you help each other, you support each other's projects, but. Seeing all over the country, all over the even all over the world for the digital version was spectacular.
So one of the interesting things about both of you is that in terms of being fans and creators, you're also convention people. Tell everybody about Cherry Capital, and I'm gonna start off by saying Cherry Capital Comic-Con is one of the most special Comic-Cons in the country. If you've never visited, visit. If for no reason other than there's a candy store in the hotel.
If for no other reason, right? So, and I think we've told this story so many different times and so many different venues that you'd think it would be easy to recount, but. So we've been doing Cherry Capital Comic-Con for, pandemic year would have been our 12th show, but we keep kicking the can because, of said pandemic. So the 12th show will happen when the world is safe, I guess. But we've been at this for like 12 years. It started as an idea, right? I left working at my LCS. Probably about 13 years ago and change. I was working a full-time job, and I was working full-time at my LCS to help keep it running. And then a kid comes along, so you got to make some hard choices. And unfortunately, working at a comic shop wasn't in the pay the bills plan. So stepped away from that, but still stayed tied to the medium. And you go and you hang at the comic shop, you talk to your friends. And we, start talking about like, well, what's kind of the next step beyond having a comic shop? Well, what about a ComicCon? And do you think this area would support it? Northern Michigan's a very interesting microcosm, especially in our area in Traverse City, that it doesn't behave as economically as a lot of the rest of the state does. It's a very tourist-driven destination. In the summertime, there's a national festival that happens here that brings in, over 1 million visitors. And this is to a town that, within the city limits usually has a population of, 15 to 25,000 people, so it's, in the greater surrounding areas, more in like the 100,000 population range. So, from an infrastructure perspective, the town isn't built to handle this huge influx of people, but yet somehow it manages to do it. So you start thinking about, we have all these hotels and this great food scene and these, this great entertainment and art scene. I mean, Traverse City's got, just down the road is the Interlochen Arts Academy. There's a real like little Bohemia feel to part of the town. The arts are alive here. And, we started talking about what would it take to put on a convention, and we started talking to local potential sponsors, talking to our radio stations, found a partner that was really, that was ready to jump on board and in a fun way kind of committed us before we were ready to. The advertisements for that first show, unbeknownst to us at the time, our local DJ went live, and was like, gonna be a Comic-Con in Traverse City, here's the dates. And it was like 3 months away. So like that first year, we planned a show in 3 months. And be shocked that my entire like head of hair isn't all gray. Because anybody that's done a convention will tell you that, it's like trying to plan a wedding in 3 months. Good luck, right? You can do it, but is it going to be good? Probably not, right? So that first year was like, 50 or 60 tables, a number of independent writers and artists. We had Tommy Lee Edwards, we had Daniel Way, we had Gary Reed. We had Jason Howard that first year, a lot of Michigan guys. And, Gary was repping Transfusion at that time. He was kind of, Caliber had kind of become Transfusion and, or at least was starting to marry brands. And, so it was just this interesting year of like having retailers and a couple of big guests. And we're like, if we get a couple hundred people, we'll be happy. And the people came and it was successful enough that we said we could probably do this again and actually like take a year to plan it and maybe do it right. And so those first 5 or 6 years were really just us learning as we went. And here we are, 12 years later, and it's a huge regional show. People travel from all over the region. People travel from all over the U.S. We've had, we had Jim Steranko. We've had David Finch. We've had
Jim O'Barr.
With Jim O'Barr, and Jim's a Michigan guy. He doesn't live in Michigan anymore, but I mean he's Michigan native, so it was fun to bring him back home. We've had so many just names in the industry, and it's also too, it's been fun because you get to really showcase the Midwest is a hotbed of amazing comics talent.
I love the snub. I love the snub of Steggy because it's just so perfect.
I'm not actively snubbing Ryan Stegman. I love Ryan Stegman. So Ryan did Cherry Capital. Like we brought him in right when he started doing, I think Sif. He had released Sif at Marvel. It was like his first Marvel work, and he came and did the show, and then has been with us quite a bit afterward. Kyle, you look like you
really plug is Aaron Stegman, because without Aaron, Ryan would never make it to any conventions. So we all know Ryan really well. We've known him for years, and it's true.
Ryan's a good dude, but Aaron is
his success is due to Aaron.
He's a rock star.
Just whatever you do, don't look for him on Sunday afternoon.
No. Or anytime 3 hours before the show floor closes. But yeah, I mean, we went down this path, and now it's just it's blown up to a big regional event, and it's a lot of fun.
It was for the longest time. It was Rob and Mike planning it with a little bit of help from some other partners. That was but it was Rob and Mike, and then that was it. And I think around year 6, they realized that just wasn't working no more, because trying to handle this show that's channeling 3,000 people through the door now, and over the weekend, so now we're at about a staff of 12, 13 people that are actively involved in planning and everything. So we have a great team of people who are just super unsung, because they just don't, they're not like Rob and I. They don't need that spotlight. They don't have that drive to be like, look at me.
Is this a shout out to Aunt Cheryl? Is that what you're saying?
Aunt Cheryl, we could not do the show without Aunt Cheryl.
Aunt Cheryl runs the ticket booths like a Swiss watch, man.
She's fantastic. That and Linda.
Yep.
Mike's mom. We could not do it without either of them.
So,
they are integral.
One of the things that, and I don't want to talk too much more about Cherry, because coming up to the time of the show, we'll definitely be talking about it. We'll get Mike to show his face on the internet and those kind of things.
Yeah. Mike talk.
Okay. All right.
There he is.
There he is.
There you go, Richard. You get the spotlight.
Richard got the spotlight.
There you go, Richard. It's good to see you, man. We haven't done one of those Zoom hangouts where I get to talk to Richard in a while. But So, but I want to talk about there's also a huge amount of sentimentality at Cherry. And by that I mean you have the Gary Reed Independent Creator of the Year Award, which is your memorial to Gary. And you also have the Steve Dillon Memorial Drink and Draw to benefit Hero Initiative.
Yeah.
So there's a huge amount of sentimentality at the show. Oh, perfect. Now he's going back to work. All right. See you, Richard. So tell me about how we'll start with the Drink and Draw, and then we'll go to Gary Reed Award, because there's some Gary Reed Award announcement type things that we can talk about. But tell me how that came to be.
Yeah, so they really kind of went hand in hand. We lost Steve and Gary very close to each other.
3 weeks apart? Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, like 3 or 4 weeks apart. And it's interesting because Gary was an early supporter of Cherry Capital, like from year one. I mentioned he was at the first show and had done subsequent shows. And, really kind of embodied what Michigan comics were and what Midwest comics were. But Steve kind of became a part of the family. We had Steve Dillon. He was a repeat offender at the show. We had him year 2 and year 4. And, we flew him in. And Steve was the nicest, most knowledgeable, and just fun guy to be around, right? Like we always, you talk about the sentimentality. We talk a lot about that when you come to the show. If you come as a guest, you come as a retailer, come as a artist, writer, whatever, you come as a fan, that you're immediately adopted into the family, that you're part of the C4 family. We talk about that a lot. It's not just a sales shtick or advertising. It's true. The friendships and the darn near family type relationships that have spawned out of the show. I mean, some of my best friends and some lifelong after I am done in comics, whenever that may be. So many of these people will still be friends and people I stay in contact with and want to hang out with. And Steve was one of those guys that just got what we were doing and got it a lot faster than what other people at the time were. And he just fit the family so much that, we couldn't wait to have him back after he left the first time. I mean, I have never seen a grown man drink so much Guinness and eat so little food and be a better, more fully functioning human being than everybody else that was there at that point. He just this rock, this stoic, like wise dad that was there, for the ride. And we had plans to bring him back a third time. and unfortunately, his untimely passing cut that idea short. We weren't able to do that, but the drink and draw we had started doing. We always try to do some charity work. We work with the 501st Legion. We usually do a kids charity and raise money with them. But then we started doing the drink and draw, and we wanted to do another charity type event centered around that. And we caught a little flack, because Steve had some health problems, tied from his years of drinking, and so the air is clear. Before we assigned his name to it, we did get clearance from his family, and we were in close contact, talked quite a bit, and we said, hey, Steve had this huge love of the Hero Initiative. He would sit at his table, and some of my fondest memories are, he would sit and do sketches and do commissions for people, and he wouldn't take a dime of people's money for himself. But he always had a jar out on the table, and he said, hey, you want a sketch? I'll do whatever you want. Just put some money in the can for the Hero Initiative. So that was his thing. It was his passion. That was what he was focused on when he did shows. He had gotten to a point where he was worried about other creators. And we thought, what better way to honor his legacy than to take our new charity event, which is really just a fun excuse for all of us to hang out after hours, right? And see some cool art getting made. But to be able to take that experience and be able to take money raised from the sales of the artwork that come from that event and put it toward such a great cause that gives back to the industry, because that's what Steve was all about. And we felt there was really no better way to honor him than to do that.
It's true. And then you'd have that's usually Friday night, and then Saturday night, it's karaoke happens, but the real thing that happens is that there's the auction for everything that's created at the drink and draw. There's a chance to buy art, and all the money from it goes to Hero Initiative. And what's always great, and I say always because I've done it once, but I know it's true, is that at the end of the night, there stands people like me and Mike with the credit card out. We'll buy every last piece. We want to make sure as much money goes to Hero Initiative as needs to get there as we can give them. And it's really it speaks a lot to the atmosphere there and the mentality there at Cherry Capital, that the rest of it's not important. It's this, and then it's the Gary Reed Award, and it's, that's all great that we get to do that, but we're really here for a bigger purpose a lot of the time, and that is family. And the comic book family. So we have a comment from Alex Larson. Rob has an enormous heart, and he attracts those kind of people, and that's why C4 is successful. It starts at the top.
And that's very kind of Alex to say. I love that guy, and I'm not just saying it because he said nice things. Alex is good.
Right. Well, he also said Pat was handsome, which we all know was a false.
You just shot your credibility right in the leg, Alex.
I was saving the second comment for after we said something nice. All right. All right. Well, that's true. C4 is family, period.
The thing I will say about Steve is Steve at all times was the epitome of an English gentleman. That man was, if you look up English gentleman in the dictionary, it should have a picture of Steve Dillon. Everybody was his friend, no matter what. There's never an unkind word in his mind.
It's true. So now tell us about the Gary Reed Independent Creator of the Year Award. It's gone to, this year it went to its first non-bearded person, which is weird.
So this will be the fifth annual awarding of the Gary Reed Independent Creator of the Year. And anybody who knows Gary knows that the only thing he would hate about this award is that it's named after him. Gary was, like Rob said, he was a big fan and friend of the show from year one, and believed in what we were doing. He also saw exactly what we were trying to do and what the thought process was for the show. And Gary was generous with his advice as well as his criticism, because his criticism was always constructive. It could be the most biting criticism you've ever gotten, but it was poignant and it was relatable, and you took it to heart, because if he didn't like it, if he didn't see something in it, he just wouldn't take the time. He if he's taking time to talk to you about what it is that he's seeing, he believes in it. He sees something in you. So whether his criticism was harsh or whatever, if you were being criticized, it meant you were worth being criticized, and that in and of itself is just amazing. But Gary consistently wanted to produce things, and he wanted to bring that next generation on. He wanted to bring them up with him. It wasn't, I'm going to step over you. I'm not stepping on you. You know, Seth was the inaugural winner of this award. Seth the Moose won this the first year. And it's so appropriate because Seth's constant refrain is same team. You know, you're always hearing him talking about same team, and that's exactly what it is. Gary looked at it as same team. We're all doing the same thing. When we all win, we all win.
Right.
So when he passed, we were all gutted, because it was literally like Monroe ComicCon, and then the Monday morning we find out. I mean, people were, you know, it was very much one of those times where I was just talking to him last night type situations. And we wanted, once again, we have done this. We were in contact with Gary's family. They were so supportive of this. They knew that we weren't doing this for anything other than to carry on Gary's spirit and to carry on his legacy. So each year we put out their applications for professionals, for your peers, and for the fans to nominate independent creators who most espouse Gary's spirit by putting out their product, putting out new things, and at the same time lifting up others with them, being generous with their time, being generous with their advice. And we've had just an incredible list of people who won that. The first was Seth the Moose, then Dan Doherty, Dan with Beardo, and he teaches at the comic schools in Chicago. Travis McIntyre, who is the heart and soul behind Source Point Press. I mean, the guy is just the driving force. There's a lot of people who are involved in that, and none of them, deserve less, credit than Travis. But Travis absolutely was out there hustling. And then last year, Casey Pierce won. So we've had just a crazy good list of people who have won this award, who absolutely are doing what Gary was doing.
On a lighter note, Gavin Smith was here the other day, and he was talking about how he won it pro tem, as it needed to be in the hands of a bearded man until you gave it to Casey. So, shout out to Gavin, just synergy. But Casey everybody who's won it is deserving. Now, when do the nominations open and that kind of stuff for the fans and for the pros?
They shortly.
Yeah, so with the world being in the state that it is, right, everything's kind of on the fly. The fan and pro nominations go live in tandem together. I would expect that we should have an announcement and forms up and ready for people. I would hope within the next week, I think, is what we're shooting for.
So, moving on from Cherry Capital, back into the world of, you guys are creators. And I know Rob's answer, so I'm not going to ask Rob this question. I'm going to ask Pat this question. Well, because Rob and I have discussed it at length, like hours and hours of discussing this probably. If you could take one character and put your hands on it and say, this is mine now, I'm going to do my thing, what character would it be? I know Rob would say Spider-Man because we've talked about it. So, Pat, who is that for you?
This is weird to me because and this really just kind of popped in my head as you're asking this question, but I think it's he's not necessarily my favorite character. He's not necessarily like one I have a deep attachment to, but I think Superman. Because I think Superman is one of the easiest and at the same time hardest characters to write. The plot points for a Superman story are pretty straightforward, but to make them interesting is such a challenge because you're taking, at the end of the day, as powerful as he is, Superman's at his best when he's the everyman. That's when he is best. And it's so hard to write that. But I think that would be where I'd just be like, this would be such a fun challenge to do. Because like I said, he's not necessarily my favorite character, but he has some of my favorite stories. I mean, Grounded is a spectacular story that just does not get when he's walking across America and reconnecting with humanity and all that. It's a powerful story.
I always love the idea of Superman in therapy.
Yeah. I could see that absolutely could be seen.
Yeah.
Because he's a broken person. He is as fragile and broken as any of us.
If there's anything that Pat knows about. Softball. Why do you let me do this to you?
It's true.
How do you feel good about it?
So, all right, Rob. And if you say Pat, I will mute you. Is there someone out there who's is there a creator out there that you've not had a chance to work with that you would like to work with?
Man, so many. There are so many. Like, we're talking about like in our indie comic scene, right? With the crazy talent that's out there. I mean, I got the dream of a lifetime to do a story with Kaylin Smith, right? I would love to do something with Seth the Moose. I would love to do something with Scoop McMahon. I would love to do something with any number of the creators that we've come across, like Jay Fosgate, Gavin Smith. That list is way too long. It's way too long. There are so many good people in that circle. If we're talking like notable names, Ryan Lee, right? Ryan Lee's a guy that is a Michigan local. He did the cover to Get in the Game. He did a book with our buddy Chris Muez a couple years ago called The Naturals. He did a book with another guy that runs in our circles, Ryan Schroed, a couple years before that. And, Ryan was on Mountainhead through IDW. And he's just next level, just spectacular, just frenetic art. Like, I could talk all day about the number of people that I would love to work with in this business.
So I've been asking everyone, some of the same questions, but Pat, you worked with a lot of people on the Get in the Game anthology, and Rob, you've worked with a lot of people on in your career. Let's put it that way. What is your collaborative process like? What are your experiences? What do you think about when you think about collaboration? That kind of thing.
I think for me, it's different depending on who it is I'm working with. So early on with the Punch in the Clock stuff, I mean, that journey was very long. And Jeff Manley and I worked on that book for 3 years together, 3 years plus. Hitting a weekly deadline, putting out strips, and then collecting it. I think probably the one thing that I learned, because Jeff was really the first artist that I worked with in a professional capacity, actually putting out a product. Jeff taught me a lot about trusting your artist, right? And as a writer, you have this idea in your head when you script out, what you want to see on the page, but you have to be willing to just let the person you're trusting with the art duties do their thing and do what they do best. And it's going to be so much better if you just trust the person you're working with to do what it is that they're there for. That's probably my biggest takeaway from working with Jeff, and something that I've tried to apply to working with everybody. But I found my collaborative process does change quite a bit. That if it's somebody I've never worked with before, I tend to script a little tighter, where I will give a lot more detail about detail and context about where things are placed, why I'm asking for certain things to be visible, and if it's going to be tied back to later in the story, like this is an important visual piece that needs to be in this panel because 16 pages from now, we're going to revisit this item and it's going to be part of the payoff. I tend to script a little bit tighter if it's somebody that I've never worked with before. If it's somebody that I have a familiarity with, that I'm friends with, or that I've had some sort of professional capacity with, I tend to do a lot more upfront talking. Like there's a lot more discussion about before you start putting pen to paper, before you really start scripting out the details of, like, at a high level, what are we trying to accomplish as a team? What do we want to put out there? Like, here's my idea. What do you see? And what does that world look like? Because it's really about, it's world building at that point when you're starting with a brand new property and you're building from the ground up, and your co-creator's just as much a part of that, right? Whether you're a writer or an artist, getting on the same page to tell the same story is super, super important.
Yeah. Pat, as an editor, I'm not gonna ask you as a writer. I'm gonna ask you as someone who edited a book. What was it like collaborating with so many different groups of people? And I know a lot of the credit for being able to be good at that because you have been, goes to, you were mentored by Drina, who will be on next hour. So we're just going to start off the top with shout out Drina Joe for teaching us all how to be better at this job. So
she really
beyond that though,
that was
amazing. With so many people.
I'm going to continue to give her shout outs because she was absolutely amazing. You do this and you think, oh yeah, this shouldn't be too bad. It's going to be okay. And through the process, it started with literal just pitches. I didn't want people to start sending in full scripts. I didn't want anything like that. And I really just went off what I felt from the pitch, which isn't necessarily bad, but you end up with some that maybe aren't really all that script ready when you go for scripting. And there's no first time creator. There's no absolutely no judgment, but they had put together a script. It was a mountain of panels for 8 pages. They had the panel layouts all set up before they even sent it to the artist, and it's just like, okay, I can tell that I can't do this. I can't edit this. So I brought Drina on, and she was so generous with her time and so willing to help with it. And it really just kind of, she gave me more and more guidance. It just, what you have to figure out what the personalities you're dealing with are, because we're all artists. We're all eccentric. We're all a little bit crazy. I don't say that in a bad way. And there's, and I don't mean to offend anybody by that, but we all have our eccentricities, and it's
go on.
So it's finding that way to communicate. And I think that was the most difficult thing is this person gonna get upset because you want them to change something in their art? Are they gonna be upset because this phrase doesn't really work, or it's too wordy for this panel, or what's that gonna look like? So I mean, really, that was just a huge learning experience going through that and learning from all these people. I think the hardest thing on anything is sticking to deadlines. It's absolutely incredible to see that, but I think I was as surprised as anybody that the book actually came to print.
Well, I mean, we did have a series of very successful mocking hashtags.
Yes.
So
I have nothing but faith in you, Pat.
Oh, I believed it would come out, but I was going to ride it for all the comedy it was worth. So.
But it is. It's really funny to see that, like to go through and you're dealing with 25 different personalities, because there's 10 teams, but there's artists, letterers, colors. There were a number of parts that it was. One person did pencils and inks. That's all they did. On a couple of those projects. So somebody else is coloring, somebody else is lettering, and again. You've talked about this quite a bit this week because you've had inkers on, you've had colorists on, that they're just so the unsung heroes of comics. To sit there and you just don't know what you're missing if you're not paying attention to those people, because they add so much and they have different talents.
Mm-hmm. It's my fervent belief that the real true unsung heroes in comics are the letterers. People don't understand what an art lettering is, but just behind them are color artists and ink artists. Like, those guys, if you just turn in a book with blue lines, it's going to look real funny. You gotta have the whole creative team. Otherwise, you don't get a final product that's worth anything.
And not all pencilers, no matter how good they are on pencils, not all of them can ink.
Right.
Right.
Absolutely. So, we've got a few minutes left here, and so I'm going to ask some fun questions now, and then we're going to talk about what people can buy from you and where they can buy it and that kind of thing. So be prepared to plug yourself. First question is favorite Pokemon.
Hands down, Pikachu, Pat, all day long.
Pat, go first.
I already went.
Yeah, but I didn't have you on screen.
It's got to be Gen 1. It's got to be Charmander, because fire type for the win.
That's fair. Rob?
Hands down, Pikachu, all day long.
Snorlax. It's Snorlax. The correct answer is Snorlax.
Well,
he's my spirit animal.
That's what I'd say. That's.
In fact, in my Pokemon Go, he's labeled as spirit animal. No. All right. So, where, Rob, you have punching the clock. You also have gunslingers. And what do you have any other projects we need to know about that you're working on or have out that are escaping my brain?
Let's do the quick plug. Yeah. There are multiple volumes of Punching the Clock available.
Yes.
There's Getting the Game. I came prepared. Gunslingers from Rocketing Studios. I did a stint in Heather Antos's Unlawful Good, an anthology of crime. I even did I helped curate a project with Lucasfilm a few years ago called Fight Like a Jedi. It was a personal project with some ties to raising some money to help a local Star Wars fan. So I've had my fingers in a lot over the years. You can buy most of this, the stuff that is still in print and available through my website at robhumphreycomics.com. Current and new projects coming out. I have 3 things that I am currently writing that I can't talk about. Let's just say that at least one of those projects involves a sequel to something I've written, and one of those projects involves a return trip to Rocketing Studios. So hopefully we will see in 2021 at least one of those projects not just get announced but fully come to fruition.
If I have to drive up and beat Uncle Tony with a sandwich to get it out, let me know.
I think there's a vested interest in having multiple projects ready to go here. I'll tell you, man, the pandemic is something I think it's a real thing, that the whole not being motivated to create and not feeling bad about it. It's just attempting to survive. I've definitely had, aside from a couple of contracted projects, I have a couple of personal projects that I'm writing for myself that are either going to get shopped to a publisher or self-published, one of the two. And, you know, I haven't made nearly as much headway on any of that stuff as I wanted to, because it's just been about mental self-care, you know, this last year. But a lot of those announcements, now that we're hopefully coming out of this, and I'm finding more time in my routine to actively finish off and finish writing these projects. Announcements soon.
All right, Pat.
You can find the archives of my old podcast that sometimes makes returns at digitalnerdage.com. That will be a storefront will be adding to that soon. I haven't done it yet, where obviously you'll be able to get in the game, which also, again, will be in previews for February. So you'll be seeing me hammering that link out a lot. So if you follow me on social media, I'm sorry in advance. I'm pretty much...
And not just because of all the shameless plugging. It's for all the content that he publishes.
Instagram and Twitter, I'm at Professor Nerdly, as you see on the screen. And then just my name on Facebook for now. There are a couple of things that I have in the pipeline. Neither of them are at a point that they can be announced. Mostly they are ones in the world building stage. I haven't even started scripting it out, but it's, you know, I'm getting all the character ideas together and all that fun stuff that happens with that. One is at a rough draft stage that it needs another overhaul. Realized through some conversations with some people that I was going for the wrong feel with the project. So I'm going to take another run at it and be a little closer to my voice as opposed to trying to be somebody else. And that one, hopefully I'm going to be able to get back to. Again, Rob nailed it. This year has been tough with the just taking care of the self-care. It's hard to hit that hit that writing goal. But also I have three. I don't know the publishing timelines on these yet. I don't know where they're coming from. But David Hayes is curating 3 different books of essays around the collected works of Steven Seagal, Chuck Norris, and Jean-Claude Van Damme, and I will have essays in each of those 3 books. They're absolutely amazing. I can't wait to read them myself. I know what I did, and what I did was interesting, but I can imagine that some people went to a really different place. So,
all right, I wanna take just a second and thank Pat and Rob for being here. Make sure you check out Cherry Capital ComicCon, Rocketing Studios, Source Point Press, all these places. Rob Humphrey's website. Don't listen to Pat's podcast. I'm kidding. Definitely listen to Pat's podcast. I've been on it. I want people to listen to my voice. So, thank you guys so much for being here. We are just out of time, so we are gonna hit our top of the hour. And guys, coming up next on the EXP Expo Day 3, Miss Jen King comes back, and she has a panel that so many of you have been waiting for anxiously and with bated breath. We're gonna get to it just as fast as we can, and we will be back in just about a minute.